You think you have a focus problem. You sit down to work, open the document, and within minutes, something feels wrong. The task feels heavier than expected. Progress feels slower than it should. Your thoughts don't line up neatly. There's friction. And then it appears, that subtle irritation. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet internal pressure that says, this is taking too long. That moment is where most people misdiagnose themselves. They say, I'm distracted, or my attention span is ruined, or I need more discipline. But what if distraction isn't the real issue? What if the real issue is that you've lost your tolerance for slow things? Because irritation isn't lack of focus, it's resistance to pace. I started noticing this outside of work first. I cook fast, not carefully, fast. I wash dishes like it's a race. I was fast at everything. I lived that life for years without realizing that I wasn't being efficient. I was just impatient. If I'm talking with someone and the conversation slows down, I start looking for an exit. Sometimes I even agree with something I don't fully agree with, just to end it. I thought this meant I was efficient. I was bragging about it too. But efficiency is calm. This wasn't calm. It was urgency. There's a difference. Efficiency comes from clarity. Impatience comes from intolerance. When you're impatient, you don't necessarily want better results. You just want to end the state you are in. That same pattern shows up when you try to focus. Real work has a tempo, and that tempo is rarely fast. Writing is slow. Thinking is slow. Understanding is slow. Building anything meaningful is painfully slow. But your nervous system isn't used to that tempo anymore. Modern life trains you on speed. Scroll, new stimulus. Swipe, new image. Click, new idea. Refresh, new reward. There is no friction in that environment. No waiting, no uncertainty, no ambiguity. It is engineered to remove the exact sensations that real growth requires you to face. And here's the important part. Scrolling for 2 hours does not feel like a focus problem. You can stay there easily. You can even call it zoning in. Why? Because nothing inside that experience challenges your tolerance. There is no irritation to endure. It moves at your speed. It feeds you before discomfort has a chance to appear. Deep work doesn't do that. When you sit with a task long enough, especially something creative, something uncertain, something that doesn't reward you instantly, your brain searches for relief. Researchers in behavioral psychology call this delay discounting, the tendency to prefer smaller, immediate rewards over larger, delayed ones. The shorter the delay, the more attractive the reward feels. This isn't moral failure, it's wiring. But wiring can be trained. The problem is that constant exposure to fast rewards shortens your tolerance window. The brain becomes less willing to wait. Studies on attention and digital media have shown that rapid, high-stimulation environments can condition the mind to expect novelty at a faster rate. When novelty slows down, perceived effort increases. In simple terms, if your daily environment moves at 100 miles per hour, anything moving at 20 feels unbearable. So when you open a document and it doesn't immediately flow, your brain doesn't say, stay. It says, switch. That switch isn't distraction. It's impatience. Impatience is intolerance in motion. It's what happens when your nervous system decides the current pace is unacceptable. And here's the deeper layer. This doesn't just affect work. It affects presence. It affects relationships. It affects listening. If someone talks slowly, irritation appears. If a moment stretches without stimulation, you reach for something. If progress isn't visible, you assume something is wrong. Over time, this conditions you to live on the surface of your own life. Because depth requires staying longer than your irritation wants to. And most people never question the irritation. They obey it. They call it efficiency. They call it multitasking. They call it optimization. But often, it's just escape wearing a productive mask. Impatience and intolerance are close, but they are not identical. Impatience is what you see. Intolerance is what's underneath. Impatience says, "Hurry up." Intolerance says, "I don't want to feel this." The feeling might be subtle: irritation, restlessness, a sense that something is dragging. It might even feel like wasted time. But look closely. When you rush cooking, what are you escaping? When you speed through cleaning, what are you avoiding? When you end a conversation early, what are you protecting yourself from? It's rarely the task itself. It's the internal sensation of being stuck inside it. That sensation feels small in the moment, but multiplied over years, it shapes your capacity for depth. Psychologists studying frustration tolerance describe it as the ability to endure discomfort without impulsively escaping it. People with higher tolerance don't necessarily enjoy discomfort more. They simply don't interpret it as a threat. They don't see slowness as danger. And that's the difference. If your nervous system reads slow progress as something is wrong, you will constantly abandon things just before they become meaningful. This is why so many people start projects with excitement and quietly leave them once novelty fades. The early stage feels stimulating. New ideas move quickly, possibilities feel open. But once reality slows down, once repetition, confusion, and imperfection appear, irritation shows up. And irritation whispers, there must be something better to do. So you look, not because you lack ambition, because you lack tolerance. Over time, this builds an invisible ceiling. You can operate in fast environments. You can react quickly. You can consume endlessly. But when something requires sustained presence, a skill, a relationship, a creative pursuit, you feel drained far sooner than you should. It's not that you can't focus, it's that you've trained yourself to leave. The modern environment accelerates this training. Social media platforms are structured around rapid reward cycles. Behavioral economists and neuroscientists have shown that unpredictable, variable rewards, like the next post, the next notification, are especially powerful in reinforcing checking behavior. Each swipe promises something new. That promise keeps you engaged without demanding patience. Deep work offers the opposite structure. The reward is delayed. Feedback is unclear. Progress is incremental. There are long stretches where nothing feels impressive. If you measure life by immediate stimulation, deep work will always lose. So the shift cannot be about forcing yourself to concentrate harder. That only creates more internal conflict. The shift is smaller. You begin by noticing irritation without immediately obeying it. When you cook, don't rush just to finish. When you clean, don't treat it like an escape route. When someone speaks slowly, let the silence stretch. This isn't about becoming passive, it's about retraining pace. You don't need to meditate for hours or disconnect from the world completely. You need micro moments where you stay slightly longer than your irritation prefers. 5 more minutes on the document. 1 more minute listening. 30 seconds before reaching for your phone. These small extensions rebuild tolerance, and tolerance changes everything. Because once slow stops feeling threatening, focus becomes natural. You don't fight yourself as much. You don't burn energy escaping. You don't confuse urgency with importance. You begin to see that speed was never the goal. Depth was. Depth in work. Depth in relationships. Depth in thought. And depth cannot be rushed. It grows in the spaces impatience used to erase. You may still be fast by personality. You may still move quickly through tasks when it makes sense. But the difference is internal. You're not running anymore. You're choosing pace. There's a quiet confidence in that. When something is slow and unclear, you don't panic. You don't assume you're broken. You don't immediately switch environments. You stay. Not perfectly, not every time, but more often than before. And that's enough. Because focus isn't a talent, it's a byproduct of patience. And patience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build every time you decide not to run.